Episode 9 opens with a heavy sense of pressure hanging over every corner of Chicago. The streets feel quieter, but the danger feels louder. This is the kind of silence that comes right before everything explodes. Tommy is no longer reacting to threats, he is surrounded by them. Every decision he made earlier in the season now stands in front of him, demanding a final answer. The power he fought to build is starting to feel like a trap instead of a throne. Tommy's world has become smaller, tighter, and far more dangerous. Allies are watching him closely, enemies are moving without warning, and even the people closest to him are beginning to question his next move. What makes this moment different is that Tommy knows the clock is running out. He can feel that someone is about to strike, but the real danger is not knowing who or from where. Trust, once his greatest weapon, now feels like his biggest weakness. This episode pushes Tommy into a mental battlefield. He is forced to look at how far he has come and what it has cost him. The confidence that once defined him is now mixed with hesitation. Every decision carries weight, and every choice threatens to destroy something he's built. There is no clean path forward anymore, only survival. The streets no longer respect strength alone, they respect strategy, timing, and sacrifice. As pressure builds, the lines between friend and enemy begin to blur. Characters who once stood firmly on one side start moving in silence, hiding their true intentions. Conversations feel loaded, glances feel suspicious, and every meeting feels like it could be the last. Episode 9 uses this tension to show that power does not disappear, it changes hands quietly, often without warning. This chapter of the story is not about action alone, it's about the emotional cost of leadership. Tommy is forced to confront what kind of man he is becoming, and whether the empire he's building is worth the damage it causes. The episode sets a darker tone, one that suggests the endgame is near. Nothing feels safe anymore. And that is exactly what makes this moment so dangerous. By the end of this section, one thing becomes clear. Episode 9 is not just another step forward. It is the point of no return. Every move made here will echo into the finale. And the choices made now will decide who survives, who falls, and who truly controls the streets when the dust finally settles. The tension in Episode 9 grows deeper as the story shifts toward the people standing closest to Tommy. What makes this part of the episode powerful is how quietly everything starts to fall apart. No loud explosions, no sudden betrayals at first, just small changes in behavior that signal something dangerous is coming. Characters who once spoke freely now choose their words carefully. Meetings feel heavier, and every silence feels like a warning. The energy in the room changes, and everyone can feel that trust is running out. Tommy begins to realize that the biggest threat is no longer coming from the outside, it is coming from within his own circle. People who once followed him without question now have their own plans, their own fears, and their own reasons to survive. Loyalty in this world is never permanent, and Episode 9 makes that painfully clear. Every conversation feels like a test, and every look carries hidden meaning. Tommy senses that someone close to him is preparing to make a move, but he cannot tell who it is or when it will happen. At the same time, the pressure on his leadership grows heavier. Tommy is forced to make decisions that will hurt people he once trusted. There is no safe choice anymore. If he hesitates, he looks weak. If he acts too fast, he risks turning allies into enemies. This balance becomes the emotional center of the episode. The power he fought so hard to gain now feels like a burden he can barely carry. The more control he tries to keep, the more chaos pushes back. Meanwhile, the people around him are changing too. Some are tired of living in fear, others see opportunity in the growing cracks within the organization. Quiet conversations begin to shape the future behind closed doors. Promises are made that may never be kept. Secrets start stacking on top of each other, and every secret brings danger closer to the surface. The atmosphere is thick with uncertainty, making it clear that betrayal is no longer a question of if, but when. This section also shows how isolation starts to consume Tommy. Even when he is surrounded by people, he stands alone. Trust becomes a luxury he can no longer afford. His instincts tell him something big is coming, but the lack of clear enemies makes it worse. Anyone could be working against him, and that fear begins to shape his decisions in dangerous ways. The more he tries to protect his empire, the more cracks begin to show in its foundation. By the end of this part of the episode, the story makes one thing clear: the balance of power is shifting. The calm is only temporary, and the storm is building fast. Every character is being pushed toward a breaking point, and the choices they make next will decide who rises and who falls. This section sets the stage for betrayal, chaos, and consequences that can no longer be avoided. The deeper the episode moves, the more the story begins to expose how fragile every alliance truly is. What once looked like solid ground now feels unstable as if one wrong step could collapse everything. Characters who once spoke with confidence now hesitate before every decision, knowing that even the smallest mistake could cost them their lives. Power in this world no longer belongs to the loudest voice but to the one who understands timing, silence, and patience. This shift changes the entire tone of the story, pushing it into darker and more unpredictable territory. Tommy's position becomes more complicated as the pressure around him grows. He is no longer reacting to threats from the outside alone. He is forced to confront the damage created by his own past choices. Old deals return with new consequences, and people he once used as tools now carry leverage over him. The weight of leadership presses down harder than ever, and the strength he once relied on no longer guarantees control. Every move he makes feels like a gamble, and the cost of losing is higher than ever before. What makes this part of the story especially tense is the silence between the characters. Conversations feel incomplete, filled with things left unsaid. A look lasts a second too long, a pause feels deliberate. Everyone seems to be calculating their next step, measuring loyalty against survival. The atmosphere is thick with suspicion, and even moments of calm feel dangerous. It becomes clear that no one is completely honest anymore, not even with themselves. As the episode moves forward, hidden agendas begin to surface. Characters who once stayed in the background start stepping into the light, revealing ambitions that were carefully concealed. Some see opportunity in chaos, while others see a chance to settle old scores. The lines between friend and enemy blur so deeply that it becomes nearly impossible to tell who is truly on whose side. This uncertainty drives the tension higher, making every interaction feel like a potential breaking point. Tommy's internal struggle grows heavier as he realizes that power comes with isolation. The more control he gains, the more alone he becomes. He starts to understand that survival in this world requires sacrifices he may not be ready to make. The emotional weight of leadership begins to show, not through words but through his actions. His silence and the way he reacts when pushed into a corner. His confidence remains, but it is no longer unshakable. By the time this part of the episode reaches its end, the direction of the story becomes clear. The calm is only temporary, and the tension has reached a level where something must break. Every character is standing at the edge of a decision that will change their fate. The stage is fully set for chaos, betrayal, and consequences that cannot be undone. What happens next will not just affect one person, it will reshape the entire power structure. Moving forward, the story now moves into its most dangerous phase, where every decision carries permanent consequences. At this point, the tension no longer hides beneath the surface. It becomes visible in every action, every look, and every moment of hesitation. The characters are no longer reacting to threats, they are preparing for impact. What once felt like quiet planning now turns into calculated movement. As everyone begins positioning themselves for what they believe is coming next, the atmosphere is thick with unease, and even silence feels heavy with meaning. Tommy finds himself standing at the center of a storm he can no longer control. The power he once commanded so easily now demands sacrifice, and the cost keeps rising. He is forced to face the reality that leadership in his world does not reward loyalty, it tests it. Every choice he makes seems to close one door while opening another filled with danger. Trust has become a liability, and the line between ally and enemy grows thinner by the hour. The more he tries to hold things together, the more the cracks begin to show. Around him, others are making their own quiet moves. Some are preparing for betrayal, others for escape, and a few are planning to take everything for themselves. What makes this moment so tense is that no one is acting openly. Deals are made through silence, glances, and half-spoken words. The smallest interaction carries enormous weight, and even the calmest conversation feels like a setup waiting to happen. Everyone is watching everyone else, trying to predict the next move before it happens. As pressure builds, emotions begin to surface in unexpected ways. Anger that has been buried for too long starts to rise. Fear shows itself in hesitation and doubt. Pride pushes certain characters to make reckless decisions just to prove they still matter. These emotional cracks reveal who is truly strong and who has only been pretending. The story slows down just enough to let these moments breathe, making each decision feel personal and dangerous at the same time. This section also highlights how power changes people from the inside. The pursuit of control has left many characters isolated, cut off from trust and genuine connection. What once felt like ambition now feels like survival. Every step forward demands something in return, and not everyone is willing to pay that price. The weight of past choices presses down harder with each passing moment, making escape feel impossible. By the end of this section, the tension reaches a breaking point. The calm that once existed is completely gone, replaced by a sense of inevitable collision. Everyone is moving towards something they can no longer avoid. The stage is fully set. The lines are drawn, and the consequences of every hidden motive are about to surface. What happens next will not just change the balance of power, it will redefine who survives when everything finally explodes. The tension reaches a point where silence itself becomes dangerous. Every character now understands that waiting is no longer an option. The choices made earlier in the story begin to close in, forcing everyone to act whether they are ready or not. The atmosphere shifts from anticipation to inevitability. This is the moment where hesitation becomes a weakness, and survival depends on who is willing to move first. Nothing feels stable anymore, and even the strongest alliances start to feel temporary. Tommy stands at the center of this storm, fully aware that the ground beneath him is collapsing. The weight of leadership presses down harder than ever, and the confidence he once carried now feels heavy with consequence. He can sense that the game has changed, but the rules remain unclear. Every decision he makes now carries a cost that cannot be undone. He is no longer reacting to threats, he is preparing for loss. The question is not whether something will go wrong, but how much it will take from him when it does not around him. Characters who once stayed silent begin to reveal their true intentions. Some see opportunity in the chaos, believing this is their chance to rise. Others act out of fear, trying to secure their safety before everything collapses. The power dynamics shift rapidly, and loyalty becomes a rare currency. Promises are questioned, past actions resurface, and motives that were once hidden begin to show. Each move feels calculated, but desperation leaks through every plan. As tension builds, the emotional weight of the situation becomes impossible to ignore. Fear, regret, and ambition collide, forcing characters to confront parts of themselves they have tried to bury. Relationships that once offered strength now become sources of conflict. Trust erodes quietly, replaced by suspicion and doubt. The atmosphere grows heavier, almost suffocating, as everyone senses that the moment of reckoning is approaching. This part of the story highlights how power reshapes people. Some are hardened by it, others are broken by it, and a few discover who they truly are when pushed to the edge. The cost of survival becomes painfully clear, and the illusion of control fades away. Every choice now feels final, every step irreversible. The world these characters built is starting to collapse under its own weight. As the section closes, the path forward becomes dangerously narrow. There is no turning back, no safe option left. The stage is fully set for the final confrontation, and the consequences of every hidden decision are about to surface. What comes next will not just decide who wins or loses, it will define who they become when everything is stripped away. The final stretch of this story unfolds with a sense of inevitability that cannot be escaped. Everything that has been building throughout the season now begins to close in from all sides. The world these characters created no longer offers protection, only consequences. What once felt like controlled chaos has turned into a slow collapse, where every move exposes another weakness. The tension no longer comes from surprise, but from the certainty that something irreversible is about to happen. Tommy now stands at the center of a storm that he can no longer steer. The choices he made to survive have shaped a reality that demands payment. He understands that power is no longer about dominance or fear. It is about endurance. Each decision he faces feels heavier than the last, not because he doubts himself, but because he finally understands the true cost of winning. The confidence that once defined him has evolved into something colder and more measured, shaped by loss and regret. Around him, the final shifts in loyalty take place. People who once followed without question begin to act on their own interests. Some move quietly, trying to protect themselves before everything collapses. Others step forward boldly, believing this is their moment to rise. The lines between ally and enemy blur completely, and the truth becomes harder to recognize. In this environment, even silence feels like a betrayal, and every word carries the weight of intention. The emotional pressure reaches its peak as long-buried conflicts rise to the surface. Characters are forced to confront the damage they have caused and the sacrifices they have made along the way. There is no room left for denial or excuses. Every mistake, every betrayal, and every act of violence now demands accountability. The story no longer focuses on survival alone, but on the price that survival demands from those who chase power. As the tension escalates, the sense of inevitability becomes overwhelming. The world built throughout the season feels like it is collapsing. Inward, folding under the weight of its own secrets, the walls close in, leaving no space to escape the consequences of past choices. Even moments of silence feel charged, as if the story itself is holding its breath before the final impact. By the end of the section, everything stands on the edge of transformation. The characters are no longer who they were at the beginning, and there is no path back to innocence or safety. The stage is set for a final reckoning where truth, betrayal, and survival collide. What happens next will not simply conclude the story, it will define the legacy left behind. When the dust finally settles, the final phase of the story unfolds with a heavy sense of finality. As if every character understands that there is no turning back, the world they have built through ambition, violence, and sacrifice now demands a reckoning. Nothing feels temporary anymore. Every step forward feels permanent, carved into the future with no chance for correction. The atmosphere is thick with consequence, and even the smallest decisions carry the weight of everything that came before. Tommy moves through this moment with a quiet intensity that feels different from anything before. He is no longer reacting or chasing control. Instead, he is confronting the reality of what his life has become. The power he once chased now feels like a burden he cannot set down. His silence speaks louder than any threat, and his presence alone changes the air around him. This is not the reckless man from before. This is someone shaped by loss, betrayal, and hard-earned awareness. The world has forced him to grow, and that growth comes with a cost he can no longer ignore. Around him, the consequences of past decisions finally collide. Characters who once believed they could escape the fallout now face the results of their actions. There are no safe corners left, no neutral ground to hide behind. Every relationship is tested, every loyalty questioned. Some characters cling to denial, hoping things will somehow return to normal. Others accept the truth and prepare for whatever comes next, even if it means losing everything they fought to protect. The emotional weight of this section is carried through moments of silence and reflection. Words are no longer enough to explain the damage that has been done. Faces tell stories that dialogue cannot. Regret, anger, fear, and acceptance all exist at the same time, creating a powerful emotional mix that drives the story forward. These moments reveal who the characters truly are when stripped of their titles, power, and excuses. As the tension peaks, the consequences of every earlier decision begin to fall into place. Long-running conflicts reach a breaking point, and unresolved tensions demand answers. The story no longer asks what might happen, it shows what must happen. The sense of inevitability grows stronger, pulling every character toward an outcome they can no longer avoid. By the end of this section, the path forward becomes painfully clear. There is no escape from what has been set in motion. The world they built has changed them permanently, and there is no returning to who they once were. What remains is the truth of who they are now and the reality they must face. The stage is fully prepared for the final reckoning, where survival will depend not on strength alone, but on the choices made when everything else has been stripped away.